Hi everyone, it's Alan Mishkolnik. Welcome back. Today we'll be talking about the three fundamentals of golf according to the stack and tilt system. In particular, we'll be delving into the first fundamental, which is a golfer's ability to control his low point. We'll talk about the considerations that are important in order to allow that golfer to control that lowest point. And finally, I'll give you a drill which you'll be able to take to the driving range in order to practice it by yourself. So in order for us to talk about or further discuss the issue of low point control, what you need to understand is that the very best players in the world are very good at managing the lowest point in such a way that they reach the lowest point of their swing arc just after they've made contact with the ball. So they would hit the ball first, and only after that the club would enter the ground, hit the turf, and they would produce the divot. The PGA Tour, the male players, they would produce an angle of attack, a downwards blow of approximately 4.3 degrees. In the past, golf instruction has very much considered static considerations such as grip, aim, stance, and posture to be fundamentals of golf. Now, whilst we don't disagree that these are very important, and certainly a lot of attention has to be paid to getting these right or functional, it is our contention that the true fundamentals of golf consist of dynamic considerations, so things that happen during the swing, so when a player carries out the swing in motion. So the three fundamentals of golf, according to the stack and tilt system, therefore would be, firstly, the ability of a golfer to control the lowest point of his swing arc, which is also the consideration that we will be looking at today in more detail. Then going forward, I will also be discussing the second and third fundamental in separate videos. Second being the ability of a golfer to hit the ball long enough and far enough in order to play a golf course efficiently. And thirdly, the ability of a golfer to hit the ball in the right direction with a repeatable curve. In determining whether a player is able to control the lowest point of his swing, firstly, we need to consider, is that player able to stay centered in his swing? So if an amateur, and this is something we see on a daily basis, has a tendency to sway his upper center and or his lower center to the right in his backswing, and then isn't able to bring that center back in his downswing, he will have a tendency to hit the ground to the right, or he will flex his arms in order to avoid the ground, and then he will thin the ball. I have already done a video on this particular topic, so if you're interested in looking into that a little bit more deeply, up here is the link. The second consideration regarding a player's ability to control his low point would be whether the player is able to control the radius of his swing. So the radius consists of your left arm, or the player's left arm, and the shaft. Now, the very best players are very capable of delivering the club in such a way that the maximum radius of the swing is reached shortly after impact. So, once they've made contact, the shaft and the left arm or the lead arm would align just after impact. This would be the maximum radius, which is where the lowest point of the swing would be. Amateurs who influence the radius negatively would either, in their backswing, bend their lead arm. This would reduce the width of the radius and would require the player to straighten the arm in the downswing, something that's coordinatively very difficult to achieve. In addition, what amateurs might do is in their downswing they might release their wrists in such a fashion that the maximum radius would be reached too early, which in turn would result in the player hitting the ground too early, or again the player flexing his arms in order to avoid hitting the ground, resulting in a thin shot. So in this case, what you'd want to do is you'd want to try to keep that left arm as straight as you can, and in your downswing ensure that the angle which exists between the shaft and your left arm is retained as long as is necessary in order to reach the maximum radius just after impact. The third consideration that has an influence on whether or not a player is able to control the lowest point of his swing is the direction in which he is swinging. So a player that is swinging on a path that is excessively in to out will have a tendency to hit the ground or to have a low point that is further right in his stance. A player that has an excessive out to in path would conversely have a low point that is further left in his stance, which is why we very often see players that swing excessively in to out instinctively position the ball further right in their stance, whereas players that swing on an out to in path would instinctively position the ball further left in their stance. So in summary, a player's ability to control the lowest point of his swing will be influenced by the player's ability to stay centered, firstly, the player's ability to control the radius of his swing in such a way that the maximum radius is reached just after impact, secondly, and thirdly, the player's ability to swing as neutrally as possible as regards his club path. Okay, everybody, so the perfect tool to give you the best feedback on whether you're able to control your low point is, in fact, some chalk. So I would recommend everybody to go out and just buy a box of this. And if you are somebody who hits off mats, which most of you will be, then you can use this really well to get immediate and very good feedback on your ability to control your low point. Okay, so I've already explained that one way to negatively influence a player's ability to control the low point is by that player not managing his radius very efficiently. So one way of not managing your radius efficiently is in your downswing, releasing the club too early, reaching the maximum radius before you've reached the ball, and thereby the club bottoming out too early, and your angle of attack by the time the club reaches the ball being positive. The result of that would be slightly thin shots or hitting the ground too early. Now, why don't we just demonstrate that? Okay, so it would be releasing the club early. There we go. So we've got 2.9 degrees upwards, an angle of attack that is the opposite of what it should be. Now, what I'd like you to do now is, as a practice drill, is do the opposite. So we're gonna try to take the club back to about 3 o'clock, and the opposite of releasing the club early would be keeping your hands ahead of the club head. Okay, keeping your hands ahead of the club head and moving to about 9 o'clock. And at the same time, I'd like you to use the chalk. And if you have a look at the mat, I've applied the chalk just left of where the ball is. So in this surface here, I'd like you to use that chalk as direct feedback as to where your club is making contact with the ground, so slightly after the ball. Okay, so let's just try a practice swing. So we're going to take the club back halfway. I'm going to try to keep my hands ahead of the club head and use the chalk as direct feedback. So my attention is going to be trying to hit that chalk in my downswing. There we go. So if you look right here, you can see that there's chalk right at the bottom of my club face, the leading edge. So I made contact with the ground at the right spot. Now let's try that with the ball. So I'm going to go 3 o'clock. I'm going to try to keep my hands ahead, not scoop, and I'm going to focus on making contact with the chalk just after the ball. There we go. That contact sounded really good. Let's see what the numbers tell us. Yes, and I've hit, in fact, it's 8.2 degrees downwards. Almost 10 degrees difference, 2.9 upwards versus 8.2 downwards. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me the thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you and goodbye from Singapore.